Great, Tina. Okay. Well, all right. Good morning. A couple of things from Sunday school. The Sunday school teacher was asking the class about the story of the Good Samaritan, and she asked the class, if you saw a person lying on the roadside, all wounded and bleeding, what would you do? And one little girl raised her hand and she said, yes, you, Sally. She says, I'd throw up. I'm just telling us what kids say. Okay, I have one more. So Sunday school teacher asked a little boy, Johnny, do you think that Noah did a lot of fishing from Noah's Ark? And he went, no, of course not. And she said, why? And he said, he only had 2 worms. Look, I don't write these things, okay? I'm just telling you. So, all right, so now on to what we're really here to do. So Benjamin Franklin said in Poor Richard's Almanac that there are three things that are extremely hard. Steal, a diamond, and to know yourself. Right? And so Emerson wrote it like this. He actually wrote this poem entitled Know Thyself, and he said, to know thyself means knowing the God that exists within you. And that's what I want to talk about today. So know thyself is sometimes attributed to Socrates, but we can actually trace historically now how it goes back even further into cultures that preceded the Greek culture. And that's all connected to this idea of an examined life. And it's asking us really, I think, to understand what is it that that we believe about us, about life, about the universe. So Matrix fans of The Matrix, remember 1999, okay? In that film, in the apartment of the Oracle, over the woman's kitchen door, there is a plaque there that says, I forget if it's Greek or Latin, but it says, know thyself. I never learned Greek or Latin. But, so where this comes from in our Western culture is in the temple of Apollo at Delphi is inscribed this know thyself. And it says that the 7 sages who were the foundation of Western civilization put this there. So I think that why this is relevant for us is that we've got to know who we are, what we're here to do. We've got to know what we believe and what we individually stand for in this life. So people have been trying to find themselves for ages, haven't they? I mean, I swear every generation, some people are trying to find themselves. But now in the science of mind, we have to come back to this idea that spirit, that you are consciousness, that is your true identity. And so when people talk about finding themselves, it's almost as if they're lost. But spirit within you can never be lost. God is always present. So remember Arthur Miller's wonderful story, Death of a Salesman? One of the sons says at the father's graveside, near the end, he says, he never knew who he was. And that's the tragedy there. That people get up in the morning, and the first thing they do is look in the mirror to see who they are. Like they might be a different person than the one that went to bed. Now, my thought about this is not a particularly good time to look in the mirror to see who you are, okay? You haven't brushed your hair yet. You look like Ishkabibble, and your face is all squished from the bed and stuff like that. So, because if it doesn't quite look like you were made in the image and likeness of God at that particular time. So, self-knowledge, I think, is all-encompassing. It's said to be the highest form of knowledge is self-knowledge. So, the more we know ourselves, the more conscious we become. The more we know ourselves, the more we become in consciousness. So one ancient Greek philosopher by the name of Thales was asked, what's the most difficult thing? And he said also, to know thyself. So he was also asked, what's the easiest thing? I really like this. And he said, to give advice. So the ancient Egyptians had this idea, the ancient Hindus had this idea of inquiring into the truth of self-knowledge. So there was a Persian poet, I know many of you have read works by Rumi, and Rumi wondered, who am I in the midst of all this thought traffic? And I like that what's going on in our head is thought traffic. And when all of that's going on, who am I? Who's there? So if I look to the Hindu teaching, in Hinduism, there is a story in the Katya Upanishad that talks of Yama. And Yama is the Lord of Death. Mhm. And so I like it because they make it not scary. He's just the Lord of Death, right? You can talk to him. And so he's teaching this young, curious boy, Nachikecha, about the mysteries of the self. And so the boy asks Yama, the Lord of Death, if it's possible to survive death, and how do you do it? And so in the course of this dialogue, Yama draws a line between the body, which experiences reality through our five senses, we all understand this, right? And the spirit, which transcends all of the sensual perceptions of the earth. So Yama says, those hypnotized by the world of senses say, I am my body. When my body dies, I die. That's it. Right? He says, but living in this superstition, they fall life after life under my sway. Right? So if you believe that all you are is a body and that your body dies, you're going to do this again and again and again, is what he's saying. But according to Yama, the key to surviving death is to transfer one's identity from the body, from the senses, to the metaphysical self. And so again, here we are back at know thyself, that this is the ultimate goal of life. And so Yama outlines a practice for the young man for this end. And it's basically a practice of meditating. That how you're going to know yourself is through meditating, and how you're going to know yourself is through the reciting of mantras. And so that's like we do when we meditate. Like when we meditated this morning, we were using a mantra, God's the love that I am. So it's the same wisdom that appears later in the Socratic dialogue, although it comes from a much earlier time in a space that's far, far away. So, I was thinking about this week, that a newborn baby doesn't really know who she or he is. It sort of grows into an identity, right? That their individual identity grows over time. And so I've read a person's self-worth is established almost completely in the first year of life. Whether or not they are enjoyed by those people close to them, I don't remember. I don't know about you. Do you remember? I don't remember that far. I mean, the only memory I have is actually a photograph of I'm under a year old and I'm sitting in the kitchen sink. I think I'm having my bath, and if not, I just happen to have a lot of bubbles on my head. But that's all I remember about that first year. But if a child is emotionally impoverished, the seed of an unhealthy self-concept has already been planted, right? So what we're all asking, in a sense, is, am I worthy of being loved? Am I worthy of being liked? Am I worthy of being respected? So identity grows in relation to our environment, our successes, our defeats, the support and the love that we hopefully have around us. And so obviously, we say this is true about children, but it's also true about us as adults, that children need to be loved and respected and praised again and again and again, but that never goes away. That never goes away. That, I believe, is always, always true for us, but it's especially so when children are young, because that reinforces the identity of the individual. The message they're getting is, you're all right. You're all right. You're fine. You're absolutely fine. And one of the things that I experience as a minister is so often meeting people who think something less than that of themselves. That they're sure, they're absolutely certain that in some way they're damaged goods, that they're defective, that they're broken in some way. And the science of mind says, no, absolutely not. That is not the truth that God created about you. That on the inside, that there is a divine blueprint for spiritual perfection. And that which exists about you on the unseen side is actually more real than what we see out here in the external. So those people who have this sense of you're all right, they have more successes and their identity grows, right? And they say, well, I'm loved, I'm respected, I'm valued, I'm competent. And that's where their self-worth comes from. So later years, here we are, right? And we find people who are, successful or not, depending upon whatever standard they want to hold up for themselves. But the only one that really means anything is the one the individual has for themselves. So what I would ask this morning is, who do you tell yourself you are? What do you believe? What do you stand for? And what are you here to do? Because I think this is how we really begin that inquiry of knowing who we are. What do I believe? What do I stand for? What am I here to do? Do I really do I really have some sense of I'm connected to something larger? That there is something infinite of which I, in fact, am a part? And that just by nature of being part of that, I have value? I think that's really what we're after. Because knowledge of the self doesn't come from outer worldly experiences or things, and we have to do all those outer worldly things again and again and again to realize, oh, that's not how I'm going to get that knowledge. Look, I always say in the Abundance Workshop, you can't tell somebody who doesn't have money that money won't solve all their problems, right? They have to get some money. And then once they get some money, they'll realize, oh, that solves some problems, and that's a wonderful thing. But there are other problems that do not get solved just because you have more money. You're just maybe a little more comfortable with those problems, or while you're experiencing those problems, So my point about this is that you can't tell somebody until they have an aspect or a component of it for themselves. And I think this is really true with knowledge of ourself, that it doesn't come from outer worldly things, but we have to look there again. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have looked everywhere out here I could possibly look, and kept coming up short on that. And so finally, as if there was like no place else to go, and I think that's what it must have been, finally it's like, okay, I'll just sit down, shut up, close my eyes, and look within. So who we are is more than our experience in the world, is what I'm trying to say. Because this world, for us in the science of mind, is just a fleeting experience on the soul's journey, right? That who we are, is not fleeting. The essential you, the essential me, has existed long before we got here and will continue to exist long after we set this earthly body aside. So we can't know ourselves truly unless we know that we are related to a principle, a power, and presence that we think of as the living spirit, that this divine, infinite activity that actually caused us to be. People say, oh, well, I don't know about that. If I go around telling people, well, I'm part of this infinite causative force in the universe, what are people going to think? And I thought, I just cannot wrap my head around the notion that great spiritual beings that have been on the planet before us were really concerned with what other people thought. I just can't imagine, Jesus and Buddha sitting at the top of the mountain saying, well, it was quite a journey getting here, don't you think? Oh, yeah, it was a long journey. It was tough. And boy, I was so worried about what people thought. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. That you don't know yourself until you know God. And so in Science of Mind, we say, yes, God is everywhere. But the God that we will get to know is right here within our own hearts, within our own body, mind. So our invitation in the Science of Mind is for people to go on this journey to develop a greater personal relationship with the Spirit of God within them. Again, Socrates said to the Senate that was actually in the process of putting him to death, he said, you can destroy my body, but you cannot kill me. Right? And so Jesus, before Pontius Pilate, Pilate says to Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus' response was, well, you say I am. And so Jesus knew who he was, and his knowledge was unshakable. It was rooted in this spiritual truth that I and the Father are one, right? And so he went on to say, who has seen me? He who has seen me has seen the Father, right? And so this he claimed for each and every one of us, for all of humanity. So, I think it's important that we not allow other people to tell us who we are, Because at best, they can only tell us what they have achieved for themselves in their own inquiry. That we have to do this for ourselves, that the journey inward is, the way I say it is, we do this work alone together. It's wonderful that we come together in community, but ultimately we all have to do the work alone. So lastly, before we pray, I wanted to share something from wonderful Oscar Wilde, who said, and this is, over the portal of the new world, be yourself shall be written. So let's do that now when we pray. So we turn our attention inward for a moment to remember that right here where we are, the fullness and the allness of God, the living spirit that creates the entire universe out of itself, is right here, expressing uniquely and perfectly by means of each and every one of us. The truth is that we are all emanations of the Most High God. And so as we join together in consciousness, recognizing our connection with this principle, power, and presence of the living Spirit, I give thanks on behalf of all of us for the privilege of knowing who we truly are. You know, I speak this word that whatever it is that was heavy on our heart today when we came in, that there is healing, that there is upliftment, that there is raising up for each and every one of us, just by nature of the fact that we've joined together in consciousness and that there's a lot of faith in this room, that we get lifted. And so we include in our prayer today our family members and our friends and loved ones, whoever's in our mind. We know that they are with us in consciousness, and we bless them, we wrap our spiritual arms around them. We speak our word for the world that we live in and all of those things that grab at our attention again and again and again. And we say, yep, even in the midst of that, God is fully present. Because there's only one power, there's one principle, there's one activity, and it's God. So we let our prayer be an actual blessing activity that encompasses our entire earth, touching all situations with healing, with love, with peace, with all needs met. And we bless our church and all churches everywhere. And we bless synagogues and temples and mosques and ashrams, all paths to God. And I'm certain that we're blessed by being together today, that there's good for all of us. And like Emma says, we ought to have it. And so with a full heart, I give thanks and release this word. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen.